We've obliterated their Navy. We've obliterated their just about everything there is to obliterate, including leadership. Their Navy's gone, their Air Force is gone, their anti-aircraft equipment is gone.
Extract troops.
There's two components to this particular military entanglement that we're in. Component one is the accomplishment of all of the military objectives that the president, the secretary, the chairman have laid out. And we're familiar with those: destroy the.
Now, it's hard to overstate the significance of this war when it comes to the U.S. and global economy. In its monthly report, the International Energy Agency warning it's creating, quote, the largest supply disruption.
3 Iranian Tomcats did not chase an American Warthog because they wanted to kill. They chased it because someone wanted the U.S. Navy to turn its head. At 2:17 in the morning, above the Strait of Hormuz, an A-10 Thunderbolt II was flying where an A-10 was never supposed to matter. Over water, inside missile range, without speed, without stealth, and without a carrier deck anywhere close enough to save it. And waiting for it were 3 F-14 Tomcats, old jets, ancient radar, museum-age airframes, the kind of aircraft Washington had spent 40 years telling itself Iran could barely keep alive. But here is the number that did not fit. The A-10 was not alone on radar. It was bait, and the Tomcats knew it. The question is not why Iran scrambled 3 fighters. The question is why the A-10 was sent there at all, why the US carrier stayed outside the kill box, and why, for exactly 11 minutes, both sides behaved like they were trying not to shoot first. Remember that number. 11 minutes. Because inside those 11 minutes, the Strait of Hormuz stopped being a shipping lane and became a loaded weapon. 20 miles wide at its narrowest. Roughly 1/5 of the world's oil moving through it. Tankers stacked like slow targets. Iranian missile batteries dug into coastlines on both sides. American ships farther south than expected. Drones overhead. Submarines below. And above all of it, one ugly, slow, heavily armored aircraft was flying straight into a trap. Or maybe out of one. That is the part nobody saw coming. The A-10 is built for dirt, not water. It was designed to fly low over battlefields, absorb gunfire, and tear open tanks with a 7-barrel cannon that fires nearly 4,000 rounds per minute. It is not fast. It is not sleek. It is not subtle. An F-14 can hunt at more than twice its speed and see farther than the A-10 can run. So when Iranian radar picked up the Warthog moving east of the traffic separation lane, it looked like a gift. An American aircraft. Slow. Exposed. Too far forward. But gifts do not appear in the Strait of Hormuz at 2:17 a.m. by accident. Watch this closely. The first Tomcat lifted from Bandar Abbas with 2 long-range missiles under its belly and a radar operator in the back seat staring into a screen older than some of the officers commanding the operation. The second followed 3 minutes later. The third stayed lower, closer to the coastline, masked by ground clutter. That third jet mattered, because it was not hunting the A-10. It was looking for what the A-10 was hiding. For decades, the U.S. Navy's answer to Hormuz was power projection, carrier air wings, destroyers, cruisers, submarines, and the implicit threat that if Iran closed the strait, Iran would lose its navy, its air defenses, and possibly much more. But Iran built its strategy around one uncomfortable truth. You do not have to defeat the U.S. Navy. You only have to make the cost of moving through one narrow strip of water too high for insurers, traders, and presidents. A mine does not need to sink an aircraft carrier. A missile does not need to destroy a destroyer. A swarm boat does not need to win a battle. It only needs to create doubt. And doubt moves oil prices faster than missiles. By dawn, the world would be asking one question: who fired first? But before that question could be answered, a smaller one had to be solved inside the cockpits. Why was an A-10 over Hormuz? The official explanation would have sounded clean. Close air support. Maritime strike readiness. Deterrence patrol. A visible warning after Iranian coastal units reportedly targeted U.S. assets. But that explanation breaks apart the moment you put a ruler on the map. The A-10 is not a naval dominance aircraft. It has no business dueling fighters. It cannot outrun missiles. It cannot survive alone against modern air defenses. And over water, its greatest strength, flying low, using terrain, disappearing behind ridgelines, vanishes. No hills, no valleys, no cover. Just black water and radar. So either someone in US command made an unforgivable mistake, or the Warthog was placed there because Iran could not ignore it. That is the first hidden move. The A-10 was a question forced onto Iran's radar screen. Shoot it down, and Tehran risks handing Washington a clean escalation trigger. Let it fly, and it may be marking missile boats, radar vans, mine layers, or mobile launchers along the coast. Chase it, and Iranian fighters reveal launch patterns, radar behavior, and command timing. There was no good answer. Only worse answers. At 2:22, the first Tomcat locked the A-10. Not fired. Locked. That distinction matters. A radar lock is not a missile, but in the air, it is a finger placed on the trigger. The A-10 pilot would have heard the warning. A harsh tone. A machine telling him that somewhere in the darkness, a predator had chosen him. The Warthog did not turn away. It descended. That was the second number that did not fit. 500 feet. Over the strait. At night. A jet designed to kill tanks was now skimming above one of the most dangerous waterways on Earth while Iranian Tomcats closed from the north. And then the US Navy went quiet. No dramatic radio warning. No public intercept claim. No carrier scramble splashed across headlines. Nothing. Silence. That silence was not weakness. It was discipline. Because the carrier was not where Iran wanted it to be. This is where the obvious story fails. The headline says Tomcats hunted an A-10. The deeper story is that Iran may have been hunting the carrier group. Not with the F-14s alone, those jets were only the visible blade, but with the entire coastline, over-the-horizon radar, fast boats, drones, coastal missiles, decoy emitters, and maybe submarines waiting in the deeper water beyond the strait. The A-10 was slow enough to invite pursuit. The carrier was valuable enough to lure into range. And Hormuz is narrow enough that one wrong move turns strategy into physics. Missiles cross water faster than politicians cross red lines. At 2:25, the second Tomcat split wide. That maneuver made no sense if the goal was simply to shoot down a slow attack aircraft. One Tomcat could handle that. Two could guarantee it. Three was excessive. Unless the formation was not built around the A-10. Unless it was building a radar net. The first Tomcat forced the Warthog low. The second moved wide to catch any supporting aircraft. The third stayed near the coast, watching for drones, jammers, or strike packages hiding below the radar horizon. A triangle. Not a chase. A trap. But traps work both ways. Because every time those Tomcats turned on radar, every time they changed altitude, every time they spoke to ground control, they wrote their own signature into the American battlespace picture. Somewhere south of Hormuz, on a ship with no lights visible from shore, operators were collecting everything. Frequencies, bearings, reaction times, command links, which radar came alive first, which base launched, which aircraft climbed, which stayed low, which voice gave permission. In modern war, the first battle is rarely about destruction. It is about making the enemy reveal how he thinks, and Iran had just been forced to think out loud. At 2:28, the A-10 made the move that changed the entire encounter. It turned toward Keshem Island, not away from danger, toward it. That island sits like a dagger along the northern side of the strait, close to Bandar Abbas, close to Iranian naval infrastructure, close to waters where small boats and missile units can disappear into clutter. For an American pilot, turning that direction looked suicidal. For Iranian commanders, it looked like confirmation. The A-10 was not lost. It was hunting something. And now the Tomcats had to decide whether to cross an invisible line. That line was not painted on a map. It lived inside rules of engagement, presidential authorizations, naval doctrine, and the private fear every commander carries in a crisis. The fear that a tactical victory could start a strategic disaster. Shoot down the A-10, and Iran wins the sky for 1 minute but may lose a week of infrastructure. Do nothing, and the A-10 may expose a missile battery Iran has spent years hiding. Follow too far, and the Tomcats might enter the envelope of American fighters waiting beyond the horizon. This was the perfect trap because every exit looked like a mistake. At 2:30, the third Tomcat finally climbed. There it was. The delayed reveal. The third aircraft had not been held low because it was protecting the coastline. It had been waiting for a drone. A small American unmanned aircraft, barely visible on radar, had been tracking the Iranian reaction from above the tanker lanes. Not threatening, not firing, just watching. The A-10 was the noise. The drone was the witness. And the Tomcats had been pulled into a theater where every second became evidence. This is how wars start now. Not with declarations, with recordings. A radar lock becomes a provocation. A turn becomes an incursion. A missile battery powering up becomes hostile intent. A jet defending its airspace becomes an aggressor depending on which camera publishes first. The Warthog had not been sent to win a dogfight. It had been sent to create a record. But Iran had prepared for that too. Because at 2:31, coastal radar on the Iranian side went dark. Not jammed. Dark by choice. The Tomcats lost part of their picture. American sensors lost part of their map. The drones suddenly had less to collect. And inside that darkness, something moved. Fast boats. Not one. Not two. A cluster. Small hulls, low profile, moving out of cover near the northern coast and spreading toward the tanker route. They did not need to attack. They only needed to be present. Because in Hormuz, presence is pressure. A tanker captain sees boats and slows. An insurer sees risk and raises rates. A president sees oil markets shaking before sunrise. That is the genius and danger of Iran's playbook. It compresses military action into economic panic. A single missile launch might be war. A dozen small boats moving at night is ambiguity. and ambiguity is where Tehran lives. At 2:32, the A-10 pilot finally broke south. The first Tomcat followed. The second stayed wide. The third turned toward the drone. For 3 seconds, the encounter balanced on a knife edge. 3 seconds. That is all it takes for a missile tone to become a launch, for an intercept to become a shoot-down, for a press briefing to become a war plan. And then something stranger happened. Nobody fired. The A-10 kept descending south. The drone shifted west. The Tomcats held their locks but did not release. The boat slowed. The carrier stayed outside the obvious range rings. The destroyers did not light up the night. Everyone had a weapon. Nobody wanted ownership of the first shot. That is loop 2. Why did Washington stay silent? Because silence protected the larger move. If the US screamed publicly about the intercept, Iran could claim defense against a hostile aircraft. If the US launched fighters, Iran could claim escalation. If the US struck coastal sites, Tehran could activate the strait politically, economically, and militarily. But by staying quiet, Washington denied Iran the propaganda frame while keeping the data. No Martyr jet. No clean casus belli. No headline Iran could control. Just a file. A long file. At 2:36, the Tomcats turned back. The chase was over. The trap was not. Because 11 minutes after the first radar lock, oil traders in London, Singapore, and New York still did not know how close the world had come to watching a US aircraft fall into the Strait of Hormuz. Tankers kept moving. Warships kept their distance. Officials said little. Analysts guessed. Everyone pretended the temperature had dropped. It had not. It had moved underground. The full picture is this: the A-10 was never the main actor. The Tomcats were never the main threat. The carrier was never the immediate target. The real battle was over escalation control. Iran wanted to prove it could threaten Hormuz without crossing into open war. Washington wanted to prove it could enter the danger zone without being dragged into Iran's chosen kill box. Both sides used aircraft that looked wrong for the mission because wrong aircraft create confusion, and confusion buys decision time. A slow Warthog over water. Ancient Tomcats in the missile age. Fast boats that never fired. A carrier that never rushed forward. Each piece looked irrational alone. Together, they formed a message. To Tehran, we can see your coastal system react. To Washington, we can make one narrow strait too dangerous to use normally. To the oil market, sleep lightly. And to every commander watching the replay, next time, someone may not hold fire. That is what happens in the next 72 hours. Not necessarily a war. Something more dangerous. A cycle. The US moves another destroyer closer. Iran disperses missile launchers. Drones fly lower. Fighters scramble faster. Tankers request escorts. Every radar lock becomes more sensitive. Every small boat becomes more suspicious. Every pilot enters the sky knowing the last crew survived because restraint held. Restraint is not a strategy. It is a temporary miracle. And miracles expire. So when the official statements arrive, they will sound clean, controlled, familiar, de-escalation, defensive posture, freedom of navigation, regional stability. Ignore the calm language. The map is what matters. A 20-mile choke point, 3 old fighters, 1 slow attack jet, a carrier held back, a coastline full of missiles, and 11 minutes where the next war almost found its opening scene. The most dangerous weapon over Hormuz was not the Tomcats missile. It was the unanswered question left behind after the Warthog turned south. Who was baiting whom? Because if Iran's trap was to pull the US Navy into range, it failed. If Washington's trap was to make Iran reveal its air defense playbook, it worked. But if the deeper trap was to teach both sides how close they can come without firing, then the next encounter will start closer, faster, lower, and with less time to choose silence.